Hello, Harmonites. So today's topic, I wanted to dive deep on breaking habits and how to go about breaking habits. Uh, what it what it comes down to, especially with this, because everybody has some kind of habit in their life at one point or time that they've wanted to say, that's not a good habit to have. It's a bad habit. How do I get this? And what happens is either they have a success rate of getting through it or they don't. And the problem is when you don't go through it, you either don't revisit it or you just say, you kind of like shrug it off or avoid it. There's an avoidance pattern that happens. This can be in anything from your nutrition, your health, to any kind of substance or bad habits, eating too much, your mentality. This can be applied to many different things. But here's what needs to happen, or so you know the process of what happens. When you have a habit, the first thing you have to do is recognize that habit's there. And the second thing to do when you recognize that habit is to break it down of why this habit exists and how it makes you feel. The key tip is how that habit makes you feel. Because once you become mindful of something, most of the time when awareness comes in of how it actually makes you feel, you realize that feeling of, whether it's something that makes you feel good or not like that, it's only temporary. So then you can kind of process and say, do I really want a temporary fix or do I want a long-term fix? Is this really these things that I have identified because I haven't healed them, or is it something because I feel it's going to better my life? So having that mindfulness and awareness, once you know your habit or something that you want to change, is to really break that down. Like, what's your goal with this, right? So at that point, you can kind of dissect and be in higher vibrations, okay? Now, if you can look at the pros and cons of why this habit exists and some of the things of how it makes you feel, whether it makes you feel bad afterwards or so forth, you can identify it then. You'll have the ability to identify it. So you need to take the time to do that instead of just going in and saying, hey, I'm going to go lose weight. It's a bad habit that I'm eating too much. Our minds can't process that level, right? The other thing is when we get into this action mode of, okay, we figure out the bad habit, we're going to go into it. 9 out of 10 times, what happens is we go into this high professional mode of putting these really high expectations on, right? And, a good example is like all of a sudden you want to get a trainer and you want to train every day. And so you might go out of the way to get really gung-ho and say, okay, well, this is what I got to do. These are the steps I got to do. I got to look the part. I got to feel the part. And it can get very overwhelming for your mentality. And it can come in an overwhelming way for your subconscious because it doesn't know what's happening. These are changes that it's almost too quick. So what happens is you shut down. That's why people don't finish, programs, or they start doing the work and then they don't finish the work because they get overwhelmed with their own expectations. They can't even freaking make them because they're in this professional mode. Not everybody is professional. Not everyone is a professional. It's okay. There are some coaches out there that will tell you to think big because in order to think big, you will put yourself more in line, right? You're more in line for yourself, stating that you own it and that if something happens that you don't meet that goal, that it's enough if it's something that's big for you to lose. If you don't meet that expectation, you are more apt to do that goal. It doesn't work for everyone. Not everybody is built that way. I, for one, had to start a little bit small so I could build up my confidence so that I could do bigger leaps. But I did start small with some of my habits that I was trying to break. My main habits was my thoughts and my emotional thoughts, especially because I had a lot of dark thoughts in my head. I had a lot of negativity that I carried around. And that negativity and that mindset altered so many things in my life, my nutrition, my eating, my relationships. I mean, everything, my career. And when I did that, I became committed. I became committed to make those changes when I saw the feelings that came up and when I saw what I had to break. And how I did it was I did things and I removed things in my life that I knew that I could easily remove and permanently do and feel okay with it. So I'm going to use food as an example. I did not start with all of a sudden eating healthy one day and saying, okay, I'm going on a diet or anything like that. I just said, I'm going to remove something from my life, and that's what it is. So my big thing was, all right, well, soda doesn't really do anything for me. And I know it's not necessarily good for you, the sugar and iced tea. I am a big iced tea drinker. I'm going to drink water now, and I'm going to eliminate that. And I started with doing stuff that seemed attainable for me to eliminate because it wasn't that big of a deal if I eliminated it. And then I kind of grew and started to eliminate other things once I got to that point and I realized, well, it wasn't that big of a deal. I got rid of it. Now I drink seltzer water, bubbly water, and so forth. But it changed, it broke the cycle, okay? And that is the other thing with habits is breaking the cycle, especially when it becomes routine of when you do something. Always try to break the routine a little bit of your daily existence so it doesn't become monotonous or anything in that level, because anything that you are committed to in changing happens in a level of, gives you that confidence to keep doing it each day. But when you become committed into that change, you see this growth spurt because, and you might not even be aware of these spurts that it's creating because all of a sudden you're like, it wasn't that hard. It wasn't that hard to break that habit. Why did I, get hung up on it so much? It was because you did so much one time to do it. The other thing is time. It is, a known fact. That's why a lot of people do these 30-day things because it takes time for your subconscious to create new habits in your mindset. So, doing things in a routine or breaking it up a little bit, it's going to take time for your subconscious to be aware of what's happening. Okay. And to allow that to happen, because most habits are formed within 30 days because that's what the body gets used to. That's what your mindset gets used to. That's what your subconscious gets used to. So to break that, it takes commitment, but it also takes action, which is the third part of breaking a habit is taking the actions to do so, like how I removed soda. I just took the action and it was done. It was complete and I kept going. Habits are patterns. These are things in your life that if you can realize the pattern of why it comes up in your life or how to break it and become aware of it, that's when you'll see these shifts happen. That's when you'll see the big shifts happen because you'll be passionate and have that movement. It won't be so hard when you're starting to move. You'll have that momentum already in your life where it just breaks a cycle and it won't even seem that hard. That's why, even, with people who work out and they work out specific amount of days in a week and, they get stronger and stronger each day because they take the time and the commitment to do that. It's the same thing with your mentality. It's the same thing with food. This is the same, mindset that you get to break a habit. One of the tips that I gave prior in another episode was for mindfulness, and it still applies for breaking habits, is to forgive yourself, to allow yourself to make mistakes. It happens, but don't give up. Don't let it stop you. That is the key. Is to keep going, And I think at that point, once you start going, you'll see the magic that happens on breaking a habit and how quickly it can come about. That's how some people just cold turkey quit smoking or drinking and doing things like that. They just make that mindset because they become aware of what it's doing, and it's not a big deal to them. All of a sudden, it's not a big deal. Others, it is a big deal because they're stuck on what they think that habit is doing for them. They're stuck on it. They're not taking the time to say, okay, well, how do you really feel when you're doing that habit? And then they go, oh. So breaking it down in that level. If you like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. If you feel guided to, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel for future episodes. You can just hit it again for those notifications to arrive. And I will see you next time.